This year's General Assembly was like no other before. Every year in June, Unitarian Universalists gather from across the country, usually in a big convention center with a maze of hallways and escalators. We come together for worship, for connection, for learning, and to do the business of our Unitarian Universalist Association. We did all of those things this June, but instead of a maze of convention center hallways, we all participated in General Assembly through an online portal, which sometimes also felt like a maze. A portal that had been used for years to allow a few hundred remote participants, but that was expanded in 2 months to accommodate the over 5,000 Unitarian Universalists who participated this year. We had nearly 20 people from our congregation participate in at least some parts of General Assembly, with even more of you tuning in for the Sunday morning worship service. Our group connected during our time at GA by using Slack to send messages and checking in on Zoom. Despite these virtual platforms, we felt that sense of connection, both with each other and with our larger faith community. We experienced meaningful moments in worship, learned new ways of thinking in workshops, and discussed some really important and powerful business in general sessions. There were many takeaways that were named by our group as we reflected on our experiences earlier this month, but the thing that rose to the top was a sense of the deep, deep commitment that our association has to inclusion and embracing diversity. We left with a sense that this was a vital commitment, and that it felt good to be a part of a faith with this at its core, and that we still had a lot of work to do to truly live into that commitment. 3 of our General Assembly participants are going to share their reflections on different aspects of their time there, and on one particular takeaway they had from their time at General Assembly. There is much more that we could share, but we hope that this gives you a taste of what we experienced at this year's virtual General Assembly.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Good morning. I'm Lindsay Sylvester, and in a little bit, you will hear Linda Hirshhorn's song, Circle Round for Freedom, performed by Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout, the Director of Worship and Music at the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. When I heard this song performed at GA, it lodged itself somewhere deep inside my head and deep inside my heart. And when I hear it, it speaks to so many different causes and beliefs. And now I lift up the line, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. This was my second GA. And in addition to the reasons Reverend Allison just gave, it was different because the UUA Youth and Youth Adult GA staff decided to resign from their positions in an act of solidarity to have UU youth and young adult leaders valued, heard, and supported in our faith. There is a history of silence on the UUA's part to respond to requests for change to support youth and young adult leaders. These requests include fair compensation for the work of youth and young adult UUA staff, and being invited to and represented at the decision-making table. As a young adult, I support and applaud the actions taken by the UUA youth and young adult staff that you can see here to resign. And I felt that absence of the regular young adult programming at GA. My hope is that others of all ages felt this too. So I say with them, youth and young adult voices cannot be silent. Our voices are necessary to this faith. We know you want your voice heard. We want ours heard too. For the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Another difference at GA this year was the presentation of the Commission on Institutional Changes report. The Commission, the COIC, was born at the 2017 GA and was charged, and I quote, to conduct an audit of white privilege and the structure of power within Unitarian Universalism, and analyze structural racism and white supremacy within the UUA, end quote. Wow, what honest and necessary work. I love this because we are a faith of equality and diversity. And what better way to check ourselves, ask ourselves, are we truly inclusive and fair? Than checking it at the top, the source, the UUA. The COIC's report, Widening the Circle of Concern, addresses so much that we can do. The UUA isn't perfect, and neither are we. But a first step towards change is acknowledging the work that needs to be done, and then doing it with open hearts. Among other things, widening the circle of concern addresses the unique problems of youth and young adults, including the constant restructuring of our programming and its effect on our spiritual growth, the unique struggles due to our intersecting marginalized identities, and our access to less capital than older age ranges and need for more support to attend events like GA. You are either one of these, a child, a youth, a young adult, or you were one of these. If it's the latter, remember that part of you. Honor that part of you by showing the children, youth, and young adults of today and tomorrow respect and equality. Show it through actions and through active decision-making. For the children of our children, keep the circle whole. And keep the circle wide and widening. Widen it for the children, the youth, the young adults.
Thank you. That was nice. Good morning. I'm Paul Tricasso, and this July I attended my first General Assembly. It was my first online convention experience. Over 5,000 UUs participated. It was stocked with events, services, lectures, workshops, teachings, meetups, and general sessions under the theme Rooted, Inspired, and Ready. When I first heard this theme, I asked myself, ready for what? A look at our current events and into our future felt overwhelming. Will all of us be able to vote safely? What will our economy look like next year? Will our kids go back to school safely? Can we really make progress in dismantling white supremacy and racism? How do we reprogram and or reprocess the social structures and systems to enable equity and fairness? Will we have a democracy? How do I get ready for all this? And what can I get ready for? The rooted experience of GA echoes the words by William Faulkner, the past is never dead. It's not even the past. That is, the past is part of us. The closing Sunday service began with a moving song written by Issei Maria Barnwell and the video montage by the UU Virtual Choir entitled We Are. They sang, we are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. The song continues. We are our sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and builders of nations. We are seekers of truth and keepers of faith makers, of peace, wisdom of ages. But the events of the program teach us that we are also heirs to the genocide of our Native Americans, heirs to kidnapping and enslavement of hundreds of thousands of Africans, exploitation of Latinx peoples, criminalization of LGBTQ peoples, and heirs to negligence toward disabled communities. Many of us have been benefactors of what Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz calls a culture of conquest. That began more than 400 years ago and still carries through today. This culture is embedded in our governing structures, foreign relations, internal social relations, and institutional structures. We see this mindset expressed today in policing and incarceration of people of color, policies and practices in immigration, and unequal economic outcomes for marginalized people, often driven by virulent and enduring racism. Many examples were evident this year on the national stage. The 2020 GA inspired and urged us to pick up the pieces of these dysfunctional artifacts left from the broken histories of the past and push forward toward a better world. Memorable for me was the interactive workshop with Chris Crass, having anti-racist conversations and inviting to action. He challenged us to continue conversations about both race within and without our congregation. The Where lecture was delivered by Naomi Klein, who wonderfully explained our interdependence of all living things, especially in a pandemic, and the need for a plan like the new Green Deal. And then we had Willard Lett from our UU Manchester, who hosted 2 workshops on reparations. The 2020 General Assembly has created calls to begin to get ready. The Conference on Institutional Change was one, the Action for Immediate Witness, UU the Vote, and the GA urges to support our green future. All are very comprehensive efforts rooted in our principles. We should hear these calls and work with each other to help make these social changes possible. There will be problems we cannot solve today, but we will have our principles, we have our covenants, and we will have each other. Let us remember that and cherish that. There will be better days.
And last, we're going to hear a few words from Sean Chadwick.
Hi, my name is Sean Chadwick. I grew up in this congregation and have been a member for a while now. This was my first GA. While I was there, I felt welcomed and inspired, and it was refreshing. There was a place where I saw support and found groups that affirmed all of my identities. I'm a person who has some intellectual disabilities, and I am gay. In addition to this, I'm also a white male. I saw, I saw disability described and framed in a different way than I have before. One part of my identity that I have never explored before is being a white male. I attended a workshop with Chris Crass called For White Men Who Want Collective Liberation, and it was helpful and not overly negative. It was framed around understanding two privileged identities. In addition, I connected and went to 2 virtual check-in meetings with Equal Access, the UUA's Disability Affinity Group. Their mission statement is to enable the full engagement of people with disabilities and Unitarian Universalist communities and in the broader society. They were successfully able to integrate technology with captioning, which made virtual GA more accessible. It was impressive that so many subgroups of communities had check-ins to connect. I'm proud to be a part of an affirming religious tradition.
Thank you to Lindsay, to Paul, and to Sean for those reflections. I want to invite you to join in our closing hymn now. It's called Wo Ya Ya, and it wonders where we are going. Heaven knows where we are going. And I think one of the takeaways from this General Assembly was that we are getting ready, but we may not know exactly where we're going to end up. So please join in singing together.